Hello. So let's talk about languages. Before anything, just warn you that this talk is mostly a matter of opinion, so I expect, well, could be some debate. Also, you can stop me at any moment if you don't understand something I'm saying, but try to keep the debate to the end. So let's go. Have you ever been in endless language discussions? Have you been frustrated by people forcing you to use the wrong language instead of the best? So could you like to know how to make people choose the right language? Yeah. Well, you can't. Sorry. The fact is, well, there isn't any best language out there. But just for the sake of fun, just forget about this slide. Pretend that we can. I'll show you how it's done. So imagine that you are going to start a new project. Which language should you choose? Tell you. So of course, you have to write it in Erlang. Why are you laughing? I am serious. Come on. I'm going to tell you why. So first, you have WhatsApp, 2 million connections per server. You can't do that with any other language. And because of this, they have just sold the company for $22 billion. So that's good, right? And then just a classic, we have Ericsson's AXD301. Ericsson, which by the way, doesn't allow me to use their logo without authorization. So I don't. They built this thing which achieved like 9 nines of reliability. That's a lot. So just to translate it to a bit more understandable language, is 20 seconds of downtime over 20 years. I think, well, not 20, 30 or something. Still quite a lot. And you can do this only with Erlang because it doesn't have shared state. It has a very sophisticated recovery model, clean actor model. So that's why they got that. And there is this company in Stockholm that they do something with payments online. But the thing is, it was like 3 developers, if I remember correctly, that started this. They just quickly developed a system that made the company profitable from the beginning, and that supported the company doubling size every year for quite some years. And actually, this is the language that is still supporting that company, which is now worth over $2 million. $2 billion. So forgot some zeros there. So yeah, that's it. Questions? Can go for lunch. I see people in nervous faces. You're not convinced? Whatever, it's like you have seen. You have any project. I see you are hesitating a bit. I'm not convinced that I have convinced you. So I think I have still half an hour. So. Yeah, so fair enough. You don't believe that Erlang is the best language? Maybe, yeah. You asked the price. It's kind of a financial company. So Ericsson and WhatsApp they don't really apply. No. Well, take a look to another financial company. We have Jane Street. I don't know if you know it. It's a kind of successful trading company. I like them because they are very techy. And they use OCaml. Well, it's not Erlang, but still functional programming, so good enough. They also have their own reasons. So in their own words, we believe that functional programming boosts our productivity, which is good. And we don't mind going our own way. I think Klarna doesn't mind going their own way and works too. What's important in the end is when you're solving hard problems, there is no substitute for using the best tool available, which is functional programming. So, well, if you don't use Erlang, at least use functional programming. I still see nervous faces again. Yeah, so this is silly. So all this means that clearly attributing successes to languages is just stupid. You should do that. And there is much more in a project than that, and more important too. And so by the same reasoning, attributing failures to projects is not a valid reason. So one problem you see with all these stories is they suffer from 2 very common and misleading biases. First is that survivors are biased, which means that you only see the ones that succeeded and went there to tell, we succeeded. You don't see the ones that failed. So it's not the same saying that these 3 companies succeeded because of Erlang than these three companies among thousands or whatever the figure is that use Erlang have succeeded. And I'm making those numbers up. I have no idea what is the success ratio of Erlang or any other language. But that's what you see with these stories. And the other one that we have also seen is rationalization. So once you succeed, you construct your story backwards. You pick the facts that you liked and that support your preconceived ideas and you explain your success with them. So for example, with the Ericsson project, it's often said that the reliability figure, which by the way is a bit, it's not actually that big, is because of Erlang. It's not mentioned that often that many lines of code in that project were written in C++, which is not the most reliable language I can think. So when you read all this literature, it has to be taken with a pinch of salt, at least, and putting a much broader context that is hidden somewhere. It's also a fun thing you can observe with failure stories when they say, don't use this language because we failed because of it. And they are kind of veiled excuse most of the time. I've seen this happening many times. So you start someone starts a project in some language that is slightly odd or not mainstream. And then somewhere in the way that project goes messy, and it comes like being just a disaster. And then at that point, people will start saying, because they use this stupid language, or they should have not chosen this other one. But the truth, at least in the ones I've seen, which I've seen quite a few, is that that project was a mess because it was made that way. So it could have been a mess no matter what language were chosen for that particular project. It's not the language that makes these things bad. So, yeah, so this is what pops up after watching these two examples. The third thing that is usually discussed when we are, what language should we use for this project, etc. I think some people will start, this kind of project is a financial project, and functional programming or object-oriented programming or whatever is good for financial projects, which is also kind of, it's a bit the same thing again. We are talking about generic languages and generic problems to solve. And there could be reasons to choose one language or the other and reasons not to choose them, but they are not causally connected. A clear example, in Klarna we have written fair and fair in Erlang. It has often been said that Erlang was the best choice for that, because this and that and yada yada. We now are writing Casper in Java and a bunch of other languages. I'm pretty sure it's also said that that's the best choice for that particular project, but this, like, in the end, is the same problem we're trying to solve. It can't be that two different things are the best for solving the same thing. So just to summarize all this ranting, I'm just saying that the project is not such a relevant factor in the project. There are much more things and more important too. So what those things could be? Well, this is a bit kind of an obvious assert, but the important thing is the health of the project in itself. So it doesn't matter what language you choose if your project is a disaster, and the other way around. But to clarify this a bit, just imagine that you are in two projects. In one project, you use your preferred language, which we will call good language, just not to annoy anyone. And in another project, you are going to be working with bad language. So now you think, which one do you like best? I hope. Well, I guess I would like to be here. It's like written in a good language is going to be awesome. However, this is not difficult to imagine. Just imagine that this project is terrible. I guess at least it has happened to me many times. You have been in projects that look awesome from technology point of view, but then you start working and everything is a mess. And why could this happen? So imagine that you don't use source control. You will do testing later when you ship. You don't even know what you are actually building. ThinkWork is kind of a mess. Quality is, we don't even know what quality means. So at some point you will be just running in circles trying to fix your own mistakes, etc., etc. So this means that we can imagine a project that is written in our preferred and best language, but doesn't work. Conversely, it's the other way around. It's also easy to see. Once you forget about that, this is stupid language, I don't like it, but you can think of a project that works well if you have ever been in one of those. Like, yeah, very scarce. But just imagine that everything is in place. So you have quality is top-notch, you have awesome planning, it's effective, you are productive, there is no bugs whatsoever, the pipeline is perfectly just what you want. It just has this little thing that it's written in say, COBOL. But still, can imagine a project like this. Probably, I don't know if it exists in COBOL, but it could. It's possible. So what happens now is we have just imagined two scenarios that clearly explain what I have explained before. That the language is not causally linked to the result of the project. It's just one of the pieces. And there are much more pieces in that puzzle, which is what this slide says. I jumped ahead. Well, we have just described two projects, and we have pointed out two things that we intuitively link more strongly to the success or the failure of the project. And what's that? So we have been talking about two projects that the main difference was not the language they were using, even though the language was like one awesome language and one terrible language. The difference was in the engineering practices that were in place. It's also kind of obvious, but it's often overlooked. This is the difference. This is what makes projects work or not in the end. Good engineering will help you succeed, and bad engineering will stall your project no matter what language you use, and it's going to end up being a mess. So just think for a while. Try to remember one bad project you were in the past. Where did you lose? Where did you waste your time? Yeah, you can think of moments where that stupid language they were using caused you to introduce a stupid bug, or you had something that needed to debug for 2 or 3 days because there were no tools or whatever. But you think, at least in my case, you think more in the global scenario. You probably can remember months spent in features you never shipped, or that were shipped and not used. Or even worse, you ship them and then you break something and you have to fix that, or annoy people. You can think also on situations where you only think you have is meetings, and more meetings. You never write any code. Or scenarios where the pipelines that you have are so slow that you have to wait for days until you can even know if your code works or not. Plans that make no sense or are obsolete after the first day. So all these things are symptoms of bad engineering, and all these things waste our time in a very noticeable way. And these are the things that are more likely to make the difference. And on the other hand, if you think of a project where everything is in place, so all the pieces connect together, you have all the infrastructure you need, it's properly planned, people are productive, teamwork is good, yeah, good quality, then it's easier to picture that project as something that is, at least has more chances to succeed. This third topic that also pops up very frequently when discussing about which project to choose, and it's how it's going to affect staffing. Because this is actually a thing that is linked to the project, to the language, and that affects the project in the long run. So I have an opinion about this, but it's also up to debate, but my impression for what I've seen is that this is a bit less of a... It's a problem, but it's not such a relevant problem as we usually see it. So the claim usually goes like this. Because of if we use language X, and being X from non-mainstream language, it's difficult to hire people, and that will make the project slightly worse. Which is true. But first, the obvious, like good people are difficult to find. So one first step that many companies do, and it makes sense, is instead of focusing on hiring people that know your technology stack, you focus on hiring good engineers, assuming they are going to learn your technology. So let's assume that we are in this scenario. in the end, is the scenario that makes more sense, more effective. But even though if you are there, if you are using a language that is not mainstream, you will hire many people that don't know the language, and they are going to need to spend some time learning the language, which that's an overhead of the project. I think for a while that, for whatever reason, you have a scenario where we have to choose language for a project, and we believe that choosing, say, Erlang is going to make it slightly better. I say slightly because I just said that cannot be the difference, but it's one of the factors. So for whatever reason, just imagine that choosing Erlang is going to make it slightly better versus using C++ or Java. So now you have two options. You can choose Erlang and start the project like that. And it's going to be slightly better every day, but then you will need to hire people, and they are going to need to learn the language. So you have that overhead. So here, my personal estimation is that how long does it take to learn a language before you can contribute something? Not before you're an expert, but you can start putting some value in the project. 2, 3, 4 weeks? I think 4 weeks sounds pessimistic for me, but it should be somewhere around that. At least for what I see in Klarna, people that come without knowing Erlang. In 2 or 3 weeks, they are writing code, and most of the time they are just trying to compile and figure out where things are. So it's not learning the language, but it takes time. On the other hand, you can choose going with C++ or Java, and then you will have a larger pool of people that can come to your project, but you will be running a slightly worse project every day. The problem with that is that that's opportunity cost, so it's difficult to see. But if there were any reason to choose a particular language for whatever factor that is not mainstream, I think this can be taken into consideration and compare what are you winning or what are you losing by not choosing a mainstream language. And I'm not saying that mainstream versus non-mainstream is bad or good. I'm just trying to put there the different factors that affect this. Sorry. Well, but then now I've just said that language could influence a bit in the project. Why is that? So, yeah. I think the most important part of the effect that the language has in a project is the relationship that it has with the engineers that work in that project. Because the engineers in the end are the ones that will have more impact in the quality of the engineering practices that are going to be involved in the project. And as I have said, those practices are the ones that are more likely to make a difference between good and bad projects. And of course, there are other people that are involved in software projects. But my guess is that the impact of language is way stronger in engineers than in product owners, project managers, etc. But anyway, they could be affected too, so they can come up in this reason. And one of the reasons the language has effect in the engineers that work in the project is that fact of languages is that different languages will attract or repel different kinds of people. There are people that don't care, there are people that do care. But this is something that happens. So, for example, coming back to Klarna again, once upon a time we attracted a lot of Erlang developers from all over the world, and also functional programmers, because the language we were using. And we could have repelled other developers. I don't know, but it's possible. And well, it has been seen sort of in the keynote too. But you'll see that the different language communities have their own cultures, and that comes with a set of detractors and a set of supporters and some set of common behaviors that people that used to hang out with those communities have. Some stereotypical examples: Java people is thought to be enthusiasts about frameworks and code conventions and patterns and these kind of things. Functional programmers are not thought to care about purity and aesthetics, mathematical aesthetics of what they do. Inside that community, you have Erlang developers, which are like the dirty and pragmatic people, and the Haskell people that are more like academic. The important thing is not whether those stereotypes are true or not, in the sense of whether they actually represent the people that work with that language, nor even whether they are good or bad. But they exist there, and they have an effect on people. So because of that, in the end, the language choice will influence the culture of your project. You will be attracting certain kinds of people and repelling other certain kinds of people. So you will be attracting certain kinds of behavior and repelling certain kinds of behavior too. So the interesting part about this is, if we think about that, at least for me, it's not what we discuss usually when we talk about languages. It's like, language is rubbish because it has mutation, and that's like the source of all evil, or has a horrible syntax, or whatever, it uses tabs. The important part is the influences in the culture of the project, which is something that is much more difficult to reason about. It's not that you have facts and you use logical connectors to say, because of this and this, you have that. This affects thoughts, it causes impulses, there are people that like and people that don't like. So it's much more difficult to manage and to see, or to predict beforehand. So in the end, the language you choose may favor or hinder the formation of good teams depending on the environment you already have. So it's much more likely that a team with a group of engineers that are confident and comfortable working with the language that they have to work with, for whatever reason, or even better, if they are enthusiasts of that language, they will have this. It's more likely that they will run a healthy project than if you have a bunch of people that don't even agree on what are the principles that should be respected. And some of those people hate the language they are using, some of those people love the language, other people want to use tabs, other people want to use spacing. So that affects the thing itself. And since this is a non-technical talk, I had to add some Venn diagrams, at least one. But yes, just to capture all this, what I think it matters most is that you find a combination of capable engineers that like the language they have to use and that like the project they have to work with. So all these pieces interact with each other in different ways depending on the setting. So you can imagine one possible scenario is when, let's say, a startup, some engineers that got along together before have to start a project, or they decide to start a project. So in this scenario, they will choose a language they like. They will probably rationalize it and say that's the best language they can use, etc., etc. But there are people that work together, they are comfortable talking together, they probably share most of the ideas already. So that's what's going to happen. So here, the engineers are fixed. The language becomes the choice. Because of that, they are setting the future culture of the project. And this, I believe, is how Klarna started. So there were 3 engineers that liked Erlang, and they built the project in Erlang because they had the opportunity to do that, and no one told them what language to choose. Over time, you see other explanations that Klarna uses Erlang because of this or because of that. But I think in the end, the truth is that, yeah, because the people that started the project chose Erlang. So it's not much more than that. You have a different setting where the language is fixed. It could be because the company has a policy that says you have to use this, or more commonly because the project has already started. So you join a project and they have a language. So here, the language is fixed. And it's sort of like if instead of being the engineers choosing the language, it's the language which chooses the engineers, in the sense that engineers have to want to go there, so they have one variable there that they cannot control, and they can decide not to go there because of the language. So this kind of predefines the culture that you can have. And this can be a good thing. It's easy to see companies that become the flagship or languages or whatever technology, as Klarna used to be for Erlang, and their employees are this enthusiast crowd that goes to conferences and writes in forums trying to convince people and evangelize them about why that's the best language. So you have a cohesive and strong culture in those companies. So one problem I see there, even though for some companies works very well, is that you have this risk of monoculture. So in the end, languages have their strengths and their weaknesses, and the communities have also their strengths and their weaknesses. When you run mainly on enthusiasts, it's very easy to just overlook the weaknesses or turn them into non-weaknesses or even strengths in some weird logic, and overemphasize the strengths. So there's this risk of becoming a bit of a lie for yourself. And I see, well, I have been mostly active in the airline community. I see that happening many times with some things that airline is not that good at, but oftentimes they are sold as good or even intentional, because people want to believe that the language is the best. I'm pretty sure that happens in all the other communities. So this brings me to the third option, which is where Klarna is now. There you have a set of choices. You can choose between Erlang, Java, Scala, JavaScript, Ruby. What happens here is you create these different groups that have their own culture. And this is nice because there are also there could be people that are very attached to a particular group, but there's also, I guess, most of the people don't mind exploring around, or some people will get convinced and say, okay, I was in the wrong community, I want to go there. So you have this interchange of cultures that can, I think, has the potential to create a stronger global culture in the company than if you just focus in one particular group, particular language. However, this also has the risk that that's not going to happen out of the box. So you can have the risk that communities are isolated, and then you, instead of having a rich collaboration of cultures, then you will have these fights of my language is better than yours. These Java guys are stupid, these Erlang guys crash all the time. So I think this is the scenario that is more appealing for the future of a company, but this also requires some fostering and careful management from the point of view of cultures. So I guess what I'm saying is we should put some care on that and try to grow on this instead of trying to convince ourselves that the languages are what matters. So bottom line is that it really, really requires some management on how to make the cultures flourish together in a better civilization. Yeah, so quick conclusion. First idea is that the technical impact of the language alone is not that important. We want to believe that, but it's not. Facts don't agree with this. And the most interesting part is that what languages do, they have a strong effect in the culture of the people that work in the project, and affect how their relationships with other groups in the company and with other companies in the technology scenario. A quick anti-conclusion, though. I haven't said that no language is better than the others. I do think that there are better languages than those languages. But what matters is not what I think, matters what the team that is working the project thinks.